What if you could hand off everything draining you in 30 minutes or less? Most founders never do. They stay stuck in ops, drowning in decisions and buried in bottlenecks. Today, on episode 1126, we're going to be talking about how founders escape operations, and we'll show you how to do it fast and for free. James Schramko here. And no, you don't need a massive team, just one key move. Welcome, Lloyd Thompson. It's great to have you on the show again.
Hi, James. Thanks for having me again. Great to be here.
Lloyd, you run VirtualDOO.com, virtualdoo.com. You've been helping founders get out of the weeds of operations all the time. I imagine when you venture into some of these businesses, you see quite the mess. Can you talk about, just briefly, what happens if people stay stuck in operations as a founder and they can't escape it? What does that business look like?
Yeah. I mean, I come across this very often. The founder is stuck in the day-to-day operations, and as a result of that, they're not spending their time working on strategy, developing the product, striking new deals, shaking the tree for new business. So it's a struggle for their business to grow if they're stuck in the day-to-day, in the inward working of the business. And then the other thing is, if you eventually want to sell your business, and I think that's what most or many business owners want to do, the buyer's not looking for a job. So if they're thinking, oh, okay, when I come in, I'm going to have to either, there's another role I need to figure out, how long is it going to take to transition the existing business owner out of that role? I don't necessarily want to do that. So that's going to affect the sales price quite a bit.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically a business is saleable to the extent that it works without the owner, right? Or the founder.
Yeah.
And if you wanted to buy a business where you wanted to do everything, I guess you just go and get a franchise. So you can be rocking up at 5 a.m. at the mall, cutting up sandwiches or making cakes. Like the dream escape hatch for some people isn't quite the dream it's cut out to be. It can turn into a nightmare. So I think a lot of people in business would like to have that freedom. Like they get their own business. They leave a job so they can leave that, corporate prison, the ivory tower. They can escape. They're back. They're now at their home and their bodies, but now they've found themselves doing like 3 times as much work for all the stress and hassle. Why do they stay stuck? Like what is actually holding them in, and why don't they get themselves out of it?
Oh, the first one I'd come across is they think it's a huge amount of effort. And they think, oh, if it's going to take this amount of effort, I might as well just do it myself. Like I'll just carry on doing it. And then it's a vicious circle and they're stuck. And then the other one related to that is, well, no one can do it like me. I mean, how often have you heard, oh, but no, it can't replace me. So that's another one. And because of that, again, the vicious circle, they end up with more and more processes. But that's just not true. Like there are a whole number of, if you break up all of the things that you own and hand them off, there are absolutely tasks that you can hand off. And then the other thing is they think about, well, maybe I can just hire someone else and they can just take care of this and they'll document everything and all of the steps. But the problem is I've seen that done so many times. They get someone in to just document all the steps and it never gets owned. There's a real gap in that with ownership. And they go through, you get these MBA types who come in, they map out every single minutiae step in the business. They have it all documented, but then it never gets owned. It's gone through to this level of, have you heard this one before, that if you want to take a document and then give it to someone else that's like, who's got no knowledge of the process whatsoever, they should be able to execute it. And like a 5-year-old could run this. I think that level of SOP is a complete waste of time. It's total BS. It's like you wouldn't take something that a web developer is doing and say, right, now your graphic designer is going to do this role. It needs to be a higher level, and then the ownership's just not going to be there if you're running that kind of SOP systemization.
Well, I think there's a scale to this. There's the 0 SOPs in a company where nobody knows what's going on. There's no reliable tracks to run that train on. And then there's like the overcomplicated SOPs. I've bumped into these business expert types. I remember this one guy, he used to wear a suit and tie even though he worked from home because he felt that's what corporates would do. And he never worked for corporate. And anyone who's worked for corporate like you and I have, we know the first thing you want to do when you get home is get that tie off around
Absolutely.
like throw the shirt away, put on a T-shirt and a hoodie, right? But he used to over-document and over-systemize everything. And it was so rigid and difficult for the team because they had no flexibility. There was no latitude at all. So yeah, in terms of a 10-year-old kid being able to run the SOP, now you're talking about McDonald's, aren't you?
Yeah, I mean, you kind of led me that way when you talked about franchise at the beginning. I'm thinking, yeah, do you really want to go down to that level? Is it really practical?
You know, they're a real estate business, and they're a massive employer, but they've systemized things down to the level where they can hire a low level of talent for the role, because like there's machines and systems that do as much as possible. And even that being the case, they still manage to mess it up probably 50% of the time. But
is it really practical for your average small business to go down to that level of detail? It's just not.
But that's it. If you were to go more down the having a talented team and hiring them for expertise and abilities that aren't common, like for example, the lady in my team who does the thumbnails for my YouTube, I don't think we can come up with an SOP that would faithfully replicate a creative process like that. It would have the main steps that for each episode we want 2 thumbnails, and that the thumbnail shouldn't reflect the title of the episode in the thumbnail because it's wasted real estate, that it should be something people want to click on. So we could say those things in an SOP, but I couldn't break it down into an SOP that comes up with a creative split test winner every time. And so there's got to be some creative ability that's brought to the table from the team player. But that being said, it's good to have an SOP, but I agree with you. Some people think, oh, I'll just solve the problem by hiring someone to come and document it. So what happens is they've paid money and now they have this full-on map and documentation that nobody does anything with. How many wikis, internal work wikis, get cobwebs and are out of date like 3 weeks after they were built?
They're just decaying. It's like you've invested all this money for all of these documents, and then the team, they didn't write these documents, and it's not directly usable, and they don't own it.
We do a weekly newsletter for this podcast, right? If you're listening to this podcast and you happen to be on my email list, you would receive an email telling you, hey, there's this new podcast, you can escape the operations, etc. The process in our business is when the podcast is done and the transcript's done and it's crunched down and put into an email format, in the Google Doc where the email draft is done, at the top are just a couple of bullet points, check the links, spam check, send before you broadcast. Just like 3 or 4 things that are critical for the success of that email broadcast. They're right there in the top of the document. When it's ready to go, somebody in my team goes to Slack in the for approval channel and it says email podcast broadcast. And then I'll just go and read it and check it. And I might click on the links. I might change a couple of words or switch around the subject line or something. And then I put a little rocket ship, which means it's good to go. That's our process. So we have a routine and a process. That's way better than having no process or routine. The chances are we'd record a podcast and no email would be sent, which would be devastating. But at the same time, we don't have like a 16-page document that would, pass some ISO standard for how to send the email. That's oversimplification. So what we've sort of arrived at is it's not something you're just going to get someone to come in and deliver something and then everything's okay, because it goes deeper than that, doesn't it? These operational prison bars, they've got those sort of logic excuses. No one else can do it like me. Well, that's an unsaleable business right there. It's quicker if I just do it myself. It is, but if you do it 1,000 times, it's actually not, because if you taught somebody with a little bit of effort and never had to do it again, like me editing my podcast, Lloyd, can you imagine if I had to edit 1,000 podcasts? Like, how much time have I saved in my life by not having to ever do that again? And I've only ever had to train 2 people to do it. The first person I handed it to, and then they trained the second person, and I just did a little check. That's it. And that's in the space since 2009 to now. I've maybe invested 3 to 4 hours of training in how to edit the podcast. And then the other, and what does it take? Like 3 times as long as the actual content to edit a piece of content. So we're talking about potentially 2,000 to 3,000 hours of my life I got back from that one-time investment in, It took longer than me editing that one podcast, but it saved me a ton of effort over the next decade and a half.
Well, you've raised another interesting point there, which is once you've handed it off to someone, it's now their responsibility to train someone else. So you should never get that item
I call
back.
that the campfire song. Like if you went to the campfire and you had like a campsite and people are coming and going all the time in their caravans or whatever, but they sang the same songs every night, eventually that would be just a self-sustaining training mechanism. You would never have to pull out a song sheet and train someone individually because it's stored there in perpetuity in the environment, and newcomers get inducted into it without your involvement. And that's exactly what happened in our SEO business. Train once, train well, and then get a second person to learn it, and then the baton or the torch can keep passing through. What remedies are there? We've talked about some of the excuses, there's logical reasons why people remain in this self-imposed prison, but they're not really saving time and they're not getting that freedom that they signed up for, and their calendar proves it. Like it's probably just jammed out. Do you see those brag screenshots from the Hustle Bro flexes?
Yeah.
You know, like
this is how busy I am.
Yeah. Here's my 50 leads for the week. I'm like, are you fucking kidding? Like, just shoot me now. That is like, that's the worst thing I could possibly imagine. In my diary are 4 calls a week for my group, for mentor group. That's it. I want the rest of the days. I want Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday for me, and optional if I want to put something in. That to me, that's more success on the schedule. So if your calendar is jammed out with meetings, red flag. If your calendar is jammed out with anything other than your unique special skill or ability, red flag. But how do we fix it, Lloyd?
Yeah. I mean, just quickly on that, I just want to say that success for me is if I get out for a surf in the day, that's what good looks like for me. That's not pack my calendar full of meetings all day long.
Like I've done a school drop off, and then I walked the beach with my dog just before this podcast, and this podcast is the last thing I do until next Tuesday. And in the meantime, I'll go to the gym and I'll do school pickups, and I'll probably potter around building out agentic AI flows, which I'm learning at the moment, and that sort of stuff, but in my own time. And of course, I respond to my clients, but it's async, which is by design. So I've worked really hard on removing bottlenecks in the business, but I think a lot of people don't even know where the bottlenecks are. Perhaps that's one of the steps.
Yep. Okay, so I've got 3 steps then, 3 steps to do instead of all of that.
All right.
So the first one is find the pain. And I think when you hear about the kind of mapping processes that these external MBA consultants do, they want to map out every process in your business. But quite often, if I ask a founder, like, where's the pain, where's the value? Most of the time, they already know. Like if I ask them, they say, oh, okay, yeah, it's in my onboarding process, or, oh, it's in my content creation. There's a process there I'm still holding on to, or, oh, there's some aspect in my delivery. So it's got to be a painful part of the process that they're already holding on to, or it's in someone else's head, and it's valuable. If it's not valuable, why are you even doing it? And so most of the time you ask them, and they know, start there. Start with the most painful, valuable piece, and start. It's that simple. You don't need to do 1,000 steps of value stream mapping or whatever that external consultant's going to say you need to do. Start with the pain. If I find they don't know what that pain is, then there's normally just a few questions I can do to surface that. And so this can be something as simple as, okay, well, walk me through, how do you acquire your customers? Talk me through that process. Like, just explain to me how does that marketing work? How's your sales process work? Basically, what I'm trying to do is get the journey of how they acquire their client, how the delivery starts, like how they onboarded, how they did the delivery, and then how the money hits the account. And so that core flow, when they start thinking about it, they normally go, oh yeah, okay, it's over here. It's in the onboarding process, or here, it's then that delivery process. And that's a very short exercise. That's just me and a founder having a quick chat and better understanding the process. And so that's one lens. And another lens, if they can't immediately think of something like, oh, okay, where is the pain, or where's the most valuable piece? The other one is the good old-fashioned task audit, which is really simple to do. And so what I do is I ask a founder, just open up a G sheet or a spreadsheet, doesn't really matter, and leave it open on your desktop for the next couple of weeks. And just every time you do a task, just add it there. And that's the minimum piece. Quite often telling a busy business owner to add lots of columns, they're not going to do it. So if I tell them that that's the most valuable piece, but if they're going to add a few more items, then I'll say, okay, give us a rough idea of how long it took. Put a drop down in there. Tell me if it was a expensive, like if this was a task that you were to hand off, is it going to be high value or low value? Like, could you give it to someone in a low cost location versus is this going to be an expert? So you could have a drop down for, expensive, not expensive to hand off. And then finally, is this something that gives you energy or does it suck the life out of you? So you might highlight it green or red. And so going through that exercise is really valuable because a lot of people just do. Like they carry on, they're doing their work and they don't think about all of the minutiae and all of the things that they're doing until they step back and go, holy crap, there's actually a whole load of admin that I'm doing here. If it's less than my effective hourly rate, then I should be handing that off. Is it a really high value task? But then there's another thing that comes up occasionally, which is, so we were working with a CEO of an SEO business, and while we did find some low value admin tasks that he was doing, we also found that he was doing quite a bit of the core delivery. And this seemed like, well, he is very good at it. He's one of these CEOs who is actually a very good visionary and he's a very good integrator. We pointed out to him, well, look, your hourly rate is this, right? Crudely, if we were to just say, what is it? If you said, what's your annual salary, divide it by, say, 2,000 hours, it's going to give you a rough idea. So if you had a salary of 200,000 and you divide it by 2,000, $100 an hour, right? So if you're going to have a task that's less than $100 an hour and it sucks the life out of you, well, you should probably hand that off. If it's a high value task that might be close to that $100 or even more, but you could probably be generating more value if you did something more in the strategy, product development, or shaking the tree for new business, you should probably be doing that. So basically we work with him to how to hand off some of those delivery tasks. So that's basically find the pain. You probably already know. You can walk through the flow and you can do a task audit. That's the first thing I'll do, find the pain.
I like it. It echoes a lot of the things I talked about in my book, Work Less, Make More, especially the task audit and scoring by effective hourly rate. It comes to mind, I just had a recent student in my Connect membership and he had never heard of EHR. I sent him off to my EHR calculator. It's on my website, the footer. There's a tools icon. He went and did it for each of the product lines that he works on and he was shocked at like some of his activities that he was working on were very low yield. And when we reflected on why he was doing them, he was saying because other people said that's what he is good at and what he does. But then when we questioned it with the hard facts, it didn't stack up. And it reminds me of Steve Jobs and when the Salesforce guy went to visit him, Steve Jobs explained to the Salesforce guy that we fit all of our products on a coffee table. We'll never work on too many projects. We only have one A team and we only want to work on one major project at a time. And for a lot of people, that would be quite shocking to strip it down. But this sits well with the 64-4 idea that I promote, and that is that almost all of your outputs are coming from very few of your inputs. So if you could identify them, which is essentially where your task audit and your effective hourly rate scoring is going to start helping, it does lead you to it. And as you said, a lot of people actually already know, but they're hiding from it with excuses. And I suppose one of the ultimate obstacles would be that they may not know how to give it away. So they know what the problem is. They know they shouldn't be doing it, but they don't know how to give it away. Let's talk about that section for a moment. How do we give away a task that we know we shouldn't be doing, that we want to give away, but we don't know how to?
Well, that's, funnily enough, my second point, give it away, inspired by the Red Hot Chili Peppers. So
you're going to sing it for us, Lloyd?
Give it away now.
Oh my God, we've reached new levels. I'm not going to say heights. But...
Okay. Okay, so the first thing is to just know that the output you're looking for, you mentioned 64-4, is you're not looking for a mega, super detailed, minutiae SOP down to the most granular level. It's not going to get maintained. It's a really poor investment to go to that level.
And can we just say, this is the most common thing I see people treat all processes equally across their business, which is outrageous. There's probably only 2 or 3 activities in the whole business that actually matter. Like in my business, we're pretty much a publishing business. We make content, we publish the content, and then I service the clients. That's the main way that it works. So all the very, very minor stuff like updating a plugin on an old affiliate site is so low on the totem pole, or high. I don't know. People say the totem pole works the other way around, but you know what I mean. It's like, let's not treat all processes equally. Let's only identify the 1 or 2 critical processes, and if we put our energy there, we've already saved before we even start. That's where we've just shortcutted the, or as they say in Formula One, we just undercut that MBA process expert right there at the starting line, because we shouldn't even bother with most of our processes. There's only a few that actually matter.
So then going with the sort of playbook style, and I liked your example earlier where you were talking about how you're doing all the podcast editing and so forth and how that's been handed off. So on the flip side of that, if I was handing over that process as the receiver, so this podcast will go live, I'll get a notification that it's gone live. There will be a podcast SOP that will be activated as soon as a team member of mine sees that this has gone live. And so then this person will go through and he's going to, okay, we need to repost this. That's going to be one item. And he'll have a script to look for, like, what's going to be interesting to repost this. And he'll send that to me. And he'll say, okay, Lloyd, this would be a suitable repost. What do you think? And then I can just check it and then, say yes, approved, and he'll send that out to all. So repost is one. He's going to send it to my interviews page. So he's going to get it up there. So my interviews page, virtualdoo.com interviews, is going to be all my interviews, including this one. So he's going to get that updated. That's another SOP. He's going to take a notification to chop it up into snippets. So he can say, oh, let's put out some little teaser for the podcast that Lloyd was on with James Schramko, and then link to the podcast. And then he will go and update my podcast bio if it's one that we want to now start saying, look, this is a particularly good podcast. We want to get this one out in front of the masses.
You're a dream guest, Lloyd. This is to a podcaster's ears. So if you go on someone else's podcast, you're going to promote them, put them on your page, put social snippets, and drive people to it. That's it.
And it all happens automatically.
Right. If you're listening to this podcast and you want to talk about operations, get in touch with Lloyd. Like, seriously though, that's the kind of support that gets people back on a podcast. And I like that you explained the SOP. In our world, as the podcaster, what happens when I finish this recording, because it's in Riverside, all I have to do is name it. And whatever I name this episode as my saved recording is generally going to drive what the show will be published as. So that takes one error potential out of the mix. And then I'm going to share the link that Riverside gives with my team in our Octopus channel. Octopus standing for like spreading the tentacles. That's our publishing channel. Once that link goes there, my team know there's some new stuff to work on, and then they get to work. Then they start doing the show notes, the podcast email, the snippets, the podcast edit. And then, sure enough, a week or so later, it just pops out on the podcast. The email gets sent. The socials happen. It's a beautifully well-oiled machine, but it's very minimal touch points.
What I have not talked about there is how we got to that SOP in the first place. Like, I've just described it to you. It's pretty easy. But what I would have done is I wouldn't have written the SOP myself. That's the first thing. And that's a common myth that the founder's like, I'm going to have to sit down and write all these SOPs. No, you don't have to write the SOP. I'm just going to jump onto Zoom with a team member who I'm going to have this handed over to. And it's going to be the I, we, you process, which I'm sure we talked about before. I'm going to do it. I'm going to say, hey, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to do this, and I'm going to click here, then I'm going to run through here. This is the process. And this is really, really easy. And I've hit record on Zoom when I do this, by the way.
Yeah.
And so then I've got my team member there. They can ask me any questions because they know this is coming their way. And at the end of that handover video that I've done with them, they're going to turn that into the playbook style, 5 or 6 bullet points, whatever it needs to be. And here's the important thing. They then got the video, so they're going to put a link to that video, which was when I explained it to them. So that's the I part. Then the next time that process runs, they're going to try and do it, but I'm going to be their safety rails. They're going to have me. I can be there for them. I can be there on Zoom. They can record on Zoom, ask me any questions. Okay, they keep the recording, and they can just, any couple more points that caught them out, any gotchas, they can put into the SOP. So again, they are writing the SOP, and then finally the you part of it, they now own the process. It's gone, and they will train the next person. I, we, you, done. I didn't write the SOP. They wrote the SOP. It's handed over, finished. And that's basically how you get an SOP handed over super quick. And there's just one more thing I want to point out, and you talked about.
Is it on that same topic? Because I've I got two things to say about that.
Okay, well, you talk about that.
One is the most important part, what Lloyd just said, is you don't have to do it yourself. Okay, that's the first most important. That's probably what holds most people back. They think, I don't have time to sit down and document everything I'm doing. Well, you don't. The person, do you know the first SOP in my business is that if anything's going to be done more than a few times, we make an SOP. That's the SOP. The second part is you're going to get the objection, Lloyd, but what if you don't know how to do something? And that's a valid objection. Like you want your team to have an SOP for a process where you don't actually do it already and don't know how to do it. So a lot of founders say that to me, but I don't know how to do it, so I can't teach them the SOP. Well, in that case, what I do is I buy training or I send them off to the documentation from the service provider. Let's say we buy a new software like an SEO software or we've got a YouTube software that helps us update descriptions and analyze keywords and stuff. I don't know how that works, but I don't have to. Someone in my team can go through the training. They can follow up the support desk that software provides, and they can learn it and then document it for the next person. So still not me doing it, and that's the most important point.
Great. Well, what I was going to add to this whole giving it away process is that once something's in an SOP, and you've got your little recipe of steps. If it's something that, if it's a repeating set of steps, which is what your classic SOP is, consider, can this be automated? Now, years ago, we did a project with a business and we got in a developer and we took their 50-step audit, which was for their customer, and we got this turned into, first of all, we automated it, and then eventually we turned it into a software product. And that took quite a lot of experience and skill to have a developer do that, but it was simple for us to understand the requirements because we had an SOP, we had videos. Like we have videos that they just recorded. We know this process. Okay, we can automate that. And so firstly, consider that if you've got a repeating process, especially if it runs out of a browser, and I'll come back to that in a second, could it be automated? And now, especially with AI agents, what you mentioned earlier, this doesn't need to be something that needs an expert as much anymore now. Like, especially coming soon in the next 6 months, this is just getting even easier, right? So now when I look at processes that a business has, I used to look and go, well, hang on, why are you doing this? Perhaps this is something that could be given to someone in a lower cost location. It's just following an SOP. But now there's another lens to this. If this is something that's a repeating set of steps and it can run out of a browser, then an AI agent can probably run this. You might want to star that one and keep it handy because it's still early days. Like as in, I'm currently running a POC with one of our customers, one of our e-coms.
A POC.
Oh, sorry, proof of concept.
Right. Just for all that.
Yeah, sorry about that. Good. Old acronym from the past that just slipped in there.
All right. You can tell that it's only been a few years.
Yeah. Still wearing a shirt, and a t-shirt.
It's always been on my list. So if I get a list of tasks, the first thing I want to do is try and delete tasks. Like these don't even matter. We shouldn't even do it. It's not core. Stop doing it. The next one was, can we delegate this either to a person or to a machine, automate it? We've been able to automate. See, a lot of people are getting confused with agents now. There's two main workflows, and whether you're using one of those platforms like I've been playing around with N8N, for example, you can still do automations that don't require AI. You put something in and then something comes out, like if this, then that, or Zapier type things. They've been around for ages. And something that comes to mind, in 2009, I ran a live workshop, and my promise was that by lunchtime of day 2, you will publish your own first website, even if you've never you don't know how to code, you've never opened a browser before, you will be able to have your own website by lunchtime of day 2. And I went to my friend Dave Wooding, and he used to say to me this: if you can say it, I can program it. And I got him to program me a website builder where all we had to do is put in the domain name that we'd purchased and the server logins and fill in some fields and hit submit, and it would publish to the web, like everything, RSS feeds, the whole bit. And these were affiliate sites. It had the copy prompts, like the introduce the problem, talk about the implications, solve the problem, send off a recommendation. Like it was all there. This is pre-AI, but it was automated. This is 2009. So that system enabled me to take a complete beginner and to be able to let them publish websites. And we had that web publishing tool in my membership for, I don't know, 8 or 9 years. But now with AI, yes, we're getting to the point where it can start bordering around where the humans have been. And we're seeing, big companies are doing this obviously en masse. I just saw an article yesterday, Telstra. They say that they're looking to reduce their workforce significantly by 2030. That has to be bullshit. They mean by the end of 2025 or 2026, I imagine. Like every single company is spending a crap ton on resources. They spend $2 billion in labor across their workforce. You'd have to think that's fair game for automation. So yes, and a few episodes back, I had Jared talking about this from theappmatch.com, and yesterday I built another tool using Bolt. It's just so easy, text to software prompts. And what I've done, and this is probably counterintuitive, and a lot of employers and employees are probably shuddering in their boots right now. Like you've got the guy from Fiverr saying to, everyone, AI is coming after your job, right? Some people say, no, it's not going to come after your job. You're just going to have a different job. That's bullshit. It is coming after your job, right? But what I've done is I've asked my team to use these tools. Let's build software. Let's build automations. Let's improve our workflow. There's no limit to how much I want you to leverage your own job, but you still have a job.
That's an important point right there. So when I'm handing something off, I want that to belong. I want that to belong to that person. I want that process to belong to that person. Now, if I've got something that's been automated or I'm using an AI agent to run that process, I still want someone to own that. And in the past, we might have had a larger team, but instead what it's going to look like is somebody is going to own a number of processes. And so that, funnily enough, brings me to my third and final point, which is often the most missing point of all, which is why things don't often stick, is because they don't lock in the ownership. And that's really important. So it's great to have a process, but if you don't say to someone, this is now your process, you own it, you're accountable for it, which means if this process breaks, you need to make sure it gets fixed. You need to keep the SOP, the main points, up to date. This is your baby, basically. And so I think some people confuse the doing and the ownership. And quite often it might be the same person. I hand this process to somebody and I want to know that this is the one person who owns it. If that person, say they go on leave, I want that person to plan by talking to someone else in the team. They're going to make sure they've handed over that process to someone else in the team to make sure they understand it. They understand the SOP. They've gone through that whole I, we, you process. That means that when they go away, someone else is going to run that process. So that's the one person I talk to. So my simple way of dealing with this is I create an index of all of the SOPs, and I have another column in there, and it just has who is the one person who's accountable for each process. And there may be another column of all of the people who are responsible, who can execute it, but I just want one person. And it's a big shift there. Like once you know that there's that one person who's accountable for it and they know that they own it, it stops it coming back. And then the other thing is related to stopping it coming back, funnily enough. So if the process breaks and they're just coming back to you and say, oh, it's broken, no, that's not going to work. You need to go through that coaching process and say, okay, well, let's go through this. What you've come to me with a problem. What are the options that you've come up with? And what's the proposed solution? And that is quite hard for many founders to do, to switch to coaching mode, because we're quite often just so
Well, they
used to
usually
just going,
just embark on angry rant mode. Like a dog that bites if you go near its bone. They're like, why? Like they get very, very upset about it. They forget for a minute the other person's considerations. So yes, it is a very common mishandling of the situation, or they just give the answer and nothing grows or learns.
yeah, and if you do that, you're just going to reinforce the behavior. You're teaching them to come back to you with a problem and know that you'll give them a solution. And I agree, this isn't an easy thing to shift to, but this is the thing that needs to happen if you want the ownership to stick. And the acronym for this, or the shortened way to remember it, is 131. One problem, 3 options. It doesn't need to be 3, but it goes well with the acronym. 3 options, 1 solution. So you can say to them, oh, you've come to me with a problem. What's your 131? And they know they've got to do the thinking. And after a while, they're going to learn, right? And if they're not someone who's going to learn from the coaching, then you've got to question, is this the right kind of person in your team if they're always bringing the problems to you? And the other thing is, if this is something that you know as a founder that you're not going to do, like this is something you know you're not going to invest in coaching, then perhaps this is where you make sure there's someone between you and the team who can run through that coaching process, make sure that they're taking ownership, make sure that they've got the right people in the team, because if they haven't, maybe they need to uplift the team or think about how they... Funnily enough, that's what we do.
Yeah, like the train tracks that keep the whole thing running. It was 1991, and I sat next to Caroline, and I asked Caroline, what is the dealer code for Boyded Lakemba? And she said, look it up yourself. I'm like, what? But do you know what it is? She goes, yes, but if I tell you, you'll keep asking me. But if you look it up, you'll look it up every other time from now on. And I thought about, it's like she was kind of harsh, but it was fair. And so I learnt my lesson a long time ago about being more resourceful. But if you enable people to be unresourceful, they will be unresourceful. That's such a good point. To your point about the spreadsheet, my desire for redundancy and backup upon backup is I will have the tasks listed down one side, I'll have the team members across the top, and then I'll have a highlighted column for the one person responsible for that thing, and then I'll have a tick in the box for everyone else who can do it. And I need to have at least 2 people that can do everything. And now in my team of 5, I'd say for almost every task, we get somewhere between 3 to 5 people can do it. Like support, 5 out of 5 can do support. For web mastering stuff, 2 out of 5. For email broadcast, 4 out of 5. For bookkeeping, 2 out of 5. And somewhat Ricardo similar-ish in my business. We don't track annual leave or days off or any of that stuff. If people want to go to a thing, they go to it. If they need to drop the kid to school or attend a university graduation for their child, they just do it. But the expectation in our business is that all things will run along smoothly and that people will take over. And to my team's credit, they do not drop the ball. The ball just keeps in motion, and I don't care who's got the ball as long as they're competent and able to do the job. It could be any one of those 3 out of the 5 who could do it. That task can do it. And also they learn and support and grow each other. It's nice when you have several eyes on the same thing, and often you can get innovation that way. So rather than, it's good to have a strict responsibility. And in terms of the automation, I'm more than happy for my team to figure out a way to automate and have that task delegated to a tool, and then we can surface them up for the next thing. My current mission is I'm building agentic AI to add to my workforce. So we'll probably end up with 10 or 12 team members, of which 7 or 8 of them will be robots and the balance will be humans, and we'll be able to cover a lot more ground than we could as a team of 5. We'll be able to cover the ground of a team of 50 or 100 with the leverage that we will get from those new ways of doing things. And I'm doing it because I like to teach what I do. I don't want to just be a theoretical teacher. I need to do it and understand it, but I do think this will be the biggest emerging need over the next few years, is people needing to lean on technology more because workplace will demand it. I do think people will be slower to hire. I do think there'll be a lot of redundancies in society. And if you want any evidence of that, rock on down to your local supermarket and you'll probably see like one, maybe two people with a swipe card monitoring people self-checking out. That's the way of the things. So that's where we're at. And I think it's as important as the internet was. So in your field, Lloyd, I think the big lesson here is you're not going to fix your operations issues by just documenting SOPs. It starts with knowing exactly everything that's being done in the business, identifying which of those few things matter the most, and then allocating a responsibility for that and refining the process on that. Would you say that's somewhere close to the mark?
Yeah, find the pain, give it away, lock in the ownership.
Delegation without documentation is just hope. And documentation might include SOP. It might include a responsibility matrix. In the dealership, when I was running that, we had a training matrix as well. So we had every task and every person, and then we actually allocated training slots for those things over the year so that they were getting continual education in that thing. But things that you could look at, have a look at your calendar. That will give you some clues. Have a look at your lead flow. Have a look at your delivery process. Have a look at invoicing, reporting. Those sort of things are the obvious ones. If no one owns it, then the boomerang comes back to you. You own it. If no one owns it, you own it. Because remember that saying, like the everybody, somebody, nobody?
Yeah.
Reminds me of that one.
Yeah.
You can't just create the SOPs. You have to assign responsibility. It does also help if the person who's responsible for it was a stakeholder in creating that SOP, doesn't it, Lloyd?
Yeah, and that's why if you get someone external to just come and write all those SOPs, it's not going to stick because they don't feel connected to it. So that's why I'm handing over to that person. They're going to write it. They know clearly what they're doing. And then the next person that they hand over is going to update, modify, maintain. They get some level of buy-in and ownership in there as well.
So real freedom actually comes from when someone else makes the right call without involving you first. Like that's when you know your team is actually functioning properly.
It's evolving without you, yes.
Yeah. So you don't really need 10 more people. It's really just a matter of reorganizing what you've got most of the time. And if you want some help with it, Lloyd can be contacted at virtualdoo.com, virtualdoo.com. This is what he does for a living. He knows all the different systems and tools, and from Kanban through to what are the sprints and all the cool stuff. You got all the acronyms under the sun, but you don't actually use most of them, do you? You just have a look at what's there and see where the process is.
I just cherry picked what I've seen to be the best pieces of a number of different frameworks over time, and just use the most bang for buck item that's going to deliver the result.
And I like that you understand business. You've gone from big enterprise business, installing $100 million banking systems, to being a solo operator at the beginning and then with a team. So you've been through the overcooked bureaucratic phase, the undercooked doing everything phase, and then the just right Goldilocks phase of having a nice team, good portfolio of clients. You've seen the whole gamut now in the several years that you've been doing this, and you bring that experience. And of course, I support you too, Lloyd. Whatever you get involved in, I'm always right behind you, lending a hand, because we're partners in that. So let's just wrap this up. So really, we've covered understanding and finding your pain, give it away, lock in ownership, and stop trying to hold on to everything. It gets tiring and exhausting when you can't let go, and that's not why you signed up for your own business, right?
That's it. It's so much better when you've got all of that time in your calendar where you can have that white space and think about, where am I really going to add value? Like, what is the next big thing that I can do, instead of being stuck in the weeds where you've got no time to think and get above it all.
Love it. Lloyd, thank you so much for joining us today. And I hope you come back with some new challenges to solve in another future episode.
Absolutely. Oh, and I'll just say one more thing. Some of the resources that I spoke about today, you can find on my page. It's virtualdoo.com/resources.
I love it. It says what it is on the tin. See you, mate.
Thanks, James.
This is James Schramko.